Chapter 5, Part 1. Arthas. I slumped on the ground while Vina and Shiro checked the condition of the survivors. After a moment, Vina put a hand on my shoulder. "This is not real," she reminded me. I knew that already, and yet, seeing all that made me angry, so angry. "Close your eyes. Breathe deeply." I did. The sense of reality in this game is messing with everyone's mind. "Don't let it catch you off guard," Shiro said after finishing up. A few minutes later, I was more in control. I nodded. "Thank you." I lost control there for a moment. "No worries, dear. Such sights making you angry just proves that you are still sane." She patted my back. "That said, this kind of scene, although unpleasant, is how things happen in the real world too. Let's not talk about monsters. Even humans do this kind of thing. And right now we are trapped in this game with millions of such people." We looked at her surprised. "Hard times bring out the monsters in people. You should take this opportunity to strengthen your resolve. In such times, excessive anger will only be your enemy. Use it as a motivation, but don't let it rule you. If I am not wrong, this is just the first of many things you will witness. Losing your temper later on can lead to losing your life." We sat there for a few more minutes, each with our own thoughts, the atmosphere growing somber. After a while, I got up. "Let's go. We need to complete the quest." They nodded as we decided on what to do with the hostages. By the end, we decided that we will carry one person each, while the last one will walk after some healing from Vina. We used the monster-repelling pouches that Vina had prepared and carried the women on our back while I supported the last girl, helping her walk. The rest of the journey was quiet. None of us wanted to speak. Each of us had our own thoughts in our mind. I used the chance to check the rewards I had received in the dungeon. Going back on the list, I saw something that took me by surprise. "Congratulations, traveler. You have discovered another secret. Reward: Goblin Slayer class unlocked. Keep working hard, traveler." A special title given to those who complete the hidden quests, Man of Culture. +3 to all stats. +6% to EXP gained. Note: the effect of a title can be enhanced the more secrets the traveler discovers in the world. Goblin Slayer? They noticed my steps, pause for a moment, and stopped too. "Did you sense something?" Shiro asked, looking around. "I unlocked a new class," I said after thinking for a moment. "Night class is unlocked already? I thought we have to take them to the castle for that," he asked, confused. "Not the night class. Another one. This is called Goblin Slayer." "Goblin Slayer?" he asked, unsure, and then, as if sensing something, his eyes widened. "A rare class. Is it a rare class? How did you unlock it?" he asked quickly. "I don't know." How was I supposed to tell him that this was the result of that achievement? I could only insist that I had no idea and make them think of alternatives. Was it because of something we did in the quest? He thought for a moment, then shook his head. "What tier is it?" "T4. The same as night? Could it be a first-time completion reward or a perfect completion reward since we didn't allow any hostages to die? Anyways, let's complete the quest, and then we can check it out. Just don't switch classes. I remember that you needed to do the quest while using the Squire class. It could be a bait. Do it after you complete the quest." I nodded, and we went ahead. Surprisingly, we didn't encounter anything on our way back. That said, we definitely attracted many eyes as soon as we reached the town. By the time we had reached the Knights Academy, many people were following us from a distance, but didn't approach us. I went and talked to the guard at the gate to submit my quest, and they carried the hostages from there. "Come with me and submit the quest." One of them led me to the reception. The receptionist was the same one who gave me the quest, Tyra. The guy who had led me there told her something, and she greeted me cheerfully. "Congratulations, Arthas. You completed the quest perfectly, and even saved all the missing people. You are officially a knight from today." There were 2 more people who were already dead. It looked like they had been dead for a while, though. "Yes. Some people from the surrounding areas had gone missing. We will send someone to investigate those. The quest we had was to retrieve the 4 people you rescued, so congratulations." She brought out a badge and gave it to me. "This is your identity plate. Now for your bonus." She brought out a book and placed it in front of me. This was posted by the family members of the party whom you rescued. It is a skill book of the skill, parry. Use it well. Thank you. I thanked her. Knight's badge. Plus 10 STR plus 10 End plus 10 Dex. T4 class. Knight unlocked. To test the class, I changed to the newly unlocked Knight class. Congratulations on being the first one from your country to advance to a 4th tier class.
Title gained.
1 among 10,000. Plus 30% increased EXP gain. Keep doing your best, traveler. Sure enough, there it was. A 36% increase in EXP gain was a lot, but as classes branch more and more, I would need to level up more than one class to unlock higher level ones, and I can lose my advantage in the long run. Moreover, this message says, first in a country, which means there would be others too, in different countries. Even now, they must be rushing forward to get the first place for the next class change. I wonder how long I can maintain my advantage? Since the quest was completed, I took a moment to check the information about class advancements for the Knight class. I went directly back home after that. Both Vina and Shuro were waiting there for me. They had returned ahead of time to avoid the crowd following us. I changed into my cloaks and sneaked back in. So, how was it? Shuro asked as soon as he opened the door for me to enter. I removed my cloak. I got it. There was also a bonus skill book for a perfect completion. I replied as I sat down on the couch. A skill book? He asked. This was the first skill book I had encountered, so I guess those were rare. I just showed him the book. What skill is this? Parry, I replied, as Vina poured me some lemonade. Thank you. He returned the book back to me. Then you get the skill? I nodded and kept the skill book in my inventory. Next, I went on to explain to them about what I had found out from the Knight Academy. There were Sword Knight and Shield Knight, depending on which skill the Knight was more proficient in when they took the advancement test. If their sword proficiency was more, they became a Sword Knight, and if their shield proficiency was more, they became a Shield Knight. In the rare case, however, if they had equal proficiency in both skills, they got an option to choose. In an even rarer case, if they had both skills maxed out before taking the quest, they get the Lord Knight class. One can already guess which class was the best among the three. Say what one might about this game master person, but he was quite detailed when making this game. Even if we hadn't been, trapped here as we are, I could still see myself playing this game rigorously. Shuro commented lightly. He was not wrong either. The game was indeed a marvel. By the way, did you find out about the Goblin Slayer class? He asked, suddenly remembering something. I shook my head.
No.
There was no information about it in the records. Really? A completely new class then. A rare class. It might be the first rare class we have encountered in the game so far. Do you really have no clue on how you unlocked the class? He asked again. I shook my head. None. That makes it so hard to narrow down. If we knew how to get this class, we could have totally sold the information and made it rich.
He sighed. Sorry.
I will try to think about anything that might be useful. I lied again. So, which class do you think I should go for my T5 advancement? Lord Knight? Or do we research it more? We research, obviously, but... He paused for a moment and looked at the two of us. I think you should go for the Goblin Slayer class. Huh? All right, listen to me, he explained. Such classes will always have advantages over other classes, and we never know what classes it can unlock when leveled up completely. Knight class is still mostly known, and we don't know if there would be an easy route to T8 or even T9 advancements. Hell, we don't even know if we could get an easy T6 advancement for it. Goblin Slayer, on the other hand, is completely in the unknown. Even if we get nothing out of it, just selling the information about the details of the class and its skills will be enough to compensate us for the hard work. Makes sense? Vina agreed too. Alright, if that's what you think is good. I agreed. We need to address another thing. Shuro began when the discussion of the class selection was over. We might need to recruit some more members to our team soon, he said, quite seriously. Seeing that we were paying attention to him, he continued. The dungeon made me realize that while our 3-man party is good and can probably handle such dungeons, going forward, 3 people is just too little. For starters, we need another frontliner, preferably a tank, and someone who can do AoE damage, a mage probably, and finally a healer. We definitely need a good main healer. But aren't you planning to become a mage yourself? Vina asked. I am more of a control type than a damage type, he shrugged. So a mage, tank, and a healer? I concluded. For starters, we will need to get others too. Several DPS, support classes, and a sub-healer for the final team, he confirmed. As long as they have decent personalities, I don't have any problems. If that takes us a bit of time, I'd rather wait than take someone untrustworthy with us.
Right.
That's why I suggested this early on. We are still in the starting stages of development, so we have some time on our hands. How many members do you think we will need? I asked. That depends. What exactly are we aiming for? What exactly is the focus of our guild? Are we going to be explorers and raiders, or are we looking to be a casual guild? What scale do we want? Do we want a guild of a dozen highly skilled and well-equipped members, or do we want a large guild with elaborate management, or just a regular guild? Everything has its advantages and disadvantages, he explained. This led us to think. I knew a thing or two about managing a business due to the influence of my parents. It might have been due to my personality, which was more mature than other kids of my age, that they started teaching me a thing or two from the start. That said, I wasn't sure what I would do about recruitment. Can you explain a few advantages and disadvantages of both systems? Vena asked. Shuro nodded and started. Small guilds means less members, a small number of people, which in turn means more trust, and a greater degree of teamwork and understanding between the members. Management will be relatively simple. The rules are lax since everyone is basically friends. Also, since the levels of all members will be more or less similar, it's easier to move from one place to another. The downsides are that we might not be able to take large-scale quests. We will need to choose the members very carefully so as to balance the team, and in case someone leaves or... He paused. We looked at him, and he took a deep breath and continued. In case someone leaves or dies, we would need to train more members to take their place, and it would leave the team completely unbalanced. There are other things too. What about the big guilds? Spending power. The big guilds will have an enormous spending power. Their large numbers will mean that they can always have enough members to grind. They can occupy areas of maps completely for private use, and fighting them will be hard. After all, numbers do matter, at least in the starting levels. They command a massive influence in the game. They can have their own production side, which produces potions and weapons, and with that many people farming, the raw materials for the production side is never low. The downside is that management is a terrible pain in the ass. He sighed. The rules of the big guild are stricter, and there are many restrictions on the members. He went on to explain several things. Were you in any guilds? I asked. In my last game? He asked, and I nodded. Well, a few. Generally small guilds. I was more of an independent player. We did have a group of friends from different guilds who used to gather together and clear difficult raids, but we never formed a formal guild. He had a smile on his face when he said this, as if reminiscing about those times. I looked at Vina. So, what do you think we should do? I asked. Both sides have advantages we cannot deny. Then, how about this? We find good players first. Skilled and trustworthy. We form a team and level up to get a significant advantage over others. These members will form the core of our guild, the ones who will concentrate on leveling and clearing the game. Then we invite smaller teams to join us and expand. Let's see it this way. This is a place where anyone can work slowly and become extremely strong. I am sure that with your T4 class, you can take down a dozen T3 players in just a matter of months. Weaker players will always be attracted to such power. Groups will form in this way. We looked at her confused, and she continued. Not all players are fighters, Arthas. People like us are rare. If the danger of dying is as real as we think it is, not many players will be daring to risk it. You don't realize it, but among over 3,000 players, only a few dozen have reached this town even now, and most of them are not even T3. By this point, most players have just accepted their reality, and yet only a few have the courage to fight forward. That said, everyone has their uses. Shuro seemed to have understood something and had a look of realization while Vina continued. We target those players who don't want to risk leveling up in dangerous places. The production classes. They are not as strong as fighter classes and will obviously be exploited if they have no support. This will cause them to gather around stronger players for protection. We target them first. They might not have raw power, but controlling the economy is a great power in itself. Money will allow us to keep our advantage over others as well as train new members. So a big guild, Shuro answered. More like an alliance of sorts, she explained. But the question still remains. Would we be able to maintain such a guild? I happen to have some experience in managing and recruiting people, she answered. She always did seem like that type, to be honest. Very well. If you all don't have any problems, I don't mind either. Arthas. I don't mind either. I shook my head.
Great.
Then we look for potential teammates. I will keep an eye out for other production class people. That only leaves us with one last question. The two of them looked at me. Huh? Chapter 5. Part 2. Arthas. A bard is a no-go. I can't sing to save my life, I denied. A musician is also good, Vina said. I did have experience in playing a piano, but I don't see myself doing it. What Shuro wanted to discuss was a subclass for me. Although we were having a bit of a problem in doing so. We wanted something which would keep me from killing and exploring to help me calm down my mind, so our choices were cut in half. The waiter came and kept 3 mugs of his honey mead on a table in front of us before coming to us and taking our order. How about a blacksmith? We don't have one in our team, and weapons and armor do take a lot of money to make. Blacksmithing is quite hard in this game. We need to practice a lot, and it will take a lot of time away from leveling, I argued. I didn't want to give away my advantage in levels. What we want is something that will take your mind off of things, something that you enjoy. Perhaps you can try out some hobbies, and we can think of some classes related to those.
Vina suggested.
The idea sounded good. All right, let's go with that. I did have a hobby.
A very odd one.
Calligraphies? Shuro asked again as we walked towards our destination.
Why?
Is there anything wrong with calligraphies? No, there's nothing wrong per se. I just didn't think you were the type to have such a hobby. My grandpa had gifted me a set on my 5th birthday. I liked doing calligraphy in my free time. It helped me focus. Calligraphy would mean a scribe class. You already have the villager class leveled up. I needed to go to the head of the village, but here we need to go to the mayor's office or the scholars' academy. And that's exactly where we were headed towards. When we figured out what I wanted, Shuro led me to get the class while Vina went back home to practice her own herbalist class skills. The process was easier than I thought. They offered the class to any max-level villager. After that, we bought a ton of materials for me to practice calligraphy. Shuro told me that he copied several books to level up his class skills and even sold them later on. In this place, there was no printing press. All the books were written by hand and copied by scribes. The academy even offered quests for it. By the time we returned, it was late night. Shuro separated from me and went to his own home. He had found a small place to rent nearby. The place was not as good as ours. It didn't have a bath and had only one small room, but on the plus side, it had a lower rent, allowing him to easily rent it out. Koka. Are you sure you both want to do this, Koka, Arthurs? Valley asked her once more. She took a deep breath and answered. Yes. Arthur was just his usual stoic self and nodded, his eyes never leaving the bed where lay Fei lay, unconscious, that abomination of a gaming helmet on her head. Koka remembered that the girl had been extremely excited about the first Vermorpk in the world and couldn't wait to try it, and how happy she was when she finally got the gaming helmet. Who could have thought? And as if this was just the beginning, bad news just kept coming. Valley came with the information that even her own sister, Chiron, was in a similar situation right now, along with the little sister of the new Lucifer and her other fellow peerage members. She had almost rushed and invaded the Gremory mansion had Valley not stopped her by force, not that going there would have helped. Everyone had seen how the game master dealt with anyone trying to interfere with his game. Not only would she kill herself, she would also endanger her sister's life by going there by herself. Koka was at her wits' end on what to do. The next piece of information he brought gave her some hope. He told her about how the Satans were planning to send people inside the game, and how it was also approved by the game master. All they needed was to order a VR set from the official website, and they could go inside the game and rescue everyone by completing the game. He became silent for a moment before speaking. Then take care. We will make sure your body is protected here. They had offered help, but she wasn't sure what she would face inside the game, and if their strengths would even be of any use inside the virtual world, so she didn't accept their help. Ultimately, only 3 people were going to go inside the game. Her, Arthur, and Elaine Westcott, Arthur's maid and lover. She was the descendant of one of the founders of the Golden Dawn Magician organization, as well as Lei Fei's maid and magic tutor. She had become a maid in the service of the Pendragon family and was the one who took care of Lei Fei all this time. Her relationship with Arthur was not accepted due to the difference in their statuses, so Arthur had left his house, so as to not implicate her due to their relationship. When she found out about Lei Fei's situation and that Arthur was planning to go inside the game, she had pleaded to accompany them. She was also a master magician with enough skill for other members of the team to recognize her. After all, this was the person who had trained Lei Fei into the excellent magician she was today. She looked at Valley and Biko, the latter waving her goodbye as she closed her eyes and darkness overtook her. The game started, and she was asked to choose her name. She chose her character name as Kuroneko and logged in. When her eyes opened again, she found herself standing in the middle of what looked to be a village. She was taken aback for a moment, as the surroundings looked too real for it to be a virtual world. Perhaps the only thing which prevented her from thinking that she had been teleported to a different world altogether were the 2 bars at the corner of her vision. She looked towards the side and saw her own reflection in a window pane. It was almost the same as her usual appearance, except the absence of her cat ears and tails. She was dressed in coarse, faded clothes which wouldn't look out of place in a medieval villager. Over the next few minutes, she checked several functions of the system to get familiar with everything and then looked around to check the place. Her appearance attracted the eyes of quite a few players. They stared at her wide-eyed but didn't approach her, instead choosing to stare at her from a distance. She wondered what was up with those looks and went ahead and talked to a few of them. One of them, a woman who looked to be in her 40s, was helpful enough to explain everything to her. What she found out next sent shivers down her spine and increased her worries even more as she thought of her sister's safety. Anyone who dies in the game died for real. Then there was the thing about time passing quickly inside the game. What had looked to be less than a week from the outside was already more than 3 months in the game world. Was Chiron already?
No.
Chiron would be safe.
She wasn't weak.
At present, Koka could only console herself with the words. She had to grow stronger as soon as possible and find her sister. She went around and asked for few things and made plans to level up faster. 2 days later, Koka found some problems. First, she wasn't even remotely near her full power. To gain power, she needed to level up. She had already read everything she could about the game and knew what she needed to know about the class system. That said, without her strength, hunting was difficult. Hunting around the village borders was too slow. There were several people who were in the starting village still hunting to get a T2 job class, and they often hunted the weaker prey near the borders of the starting village. And with the spawn time being what it was, it made leveling up very difficult for the people. If she wanted to level up faster, she had to use some other means. What she had found out was that this game offered a large degree of freedom in the actions of a person. She was about to test out just how much that freedom was. Over the next week, she spent all her time hunting, especially at nights, when there were fewer people near the outer parts of the town. The level of monsters also increased slightly, but that was only for the better. She might have lost her power, but her experience was every bit as useful as it was in the real world. When they were younger, she had survived in the underworld slums, protecting and feeding her sister all by herself. Hunting and escaping others is not difficult for her. She found out that she could use poison to hunt and used her money to buy poison from the village shop. It cost her a lot, but she could manage. She didn't spend her time in the village inn, and that saved her a few extra bucks. After getting poison, she could easily hunt higher-level animals, although she had to hide and wait for them to slowly reach a near-death state where she could just end them with a single strike. It was an exhaustingly slow process, but it did give her more experience than anything she could get while hunting near the village borders. Once in a while, she saw a few players coming to the forest, but they never did so at nights, and they were almost always in teams, so it was easy to avoid them. Chapter 5, Part 3. Koka. And no, please forgive me. I won't do that ever again. She looked at the guy begging her feet. Two others beside him were too scared to even speak. He was a level 8 villager while the other two were level 7. They had followed her while she went out to hunt. She could smell the scent of alcohol from them even from this distance, although it was getting replaced by the scent of blood every second. Just outside the village, she sensed someone approach her and quickly placed a trap for them. She was still only level 6, while even their weakest member was higher than her in level. Even their equipment was better than hers, but she noticed that they were obviously amateurs. It was evident that they had lost their sense in their drunken state and were intending to assault her. Too bad they were no match for her experience. She had survived in the underworld when she was a child. Taking care of these types of people was nothing for her. Although, it did take her all her paralytic powder to bring them down. She had spent everything to prepare to hunt bigger prey, but had to use it on them. For people like them, she had no mercy. Please, I will do anything.
Money. Yes.
I have gold. Here. He threw out gold from inventory at her feet, which was followed by equipment and other things. She eyed them and raised an eyebrow. Well, who is she to deny such a harvest? She was already short on money as it is. Without another word, she stored everything in her inventory. The game only had a small chance to drop the equipment of the players when they died or were killed, but she suddenly found out that there were no limitations on this kind of thing. A loophole? Then again, it was understandable. After all, she didn't rob them. They offered the items themselves. His followers looked at her keeping everything in her inventory, and the guy himself smiled, thinking he was forgiven. She let him think so while she looked at the other two, drawing her newly gained dagger and slightly narrowing her eyes. We have gold too.
Yes. Take it.
But please let us go. The two followers begged and brought out their own gold and laid it in front of her. She took everything and kept it into her inventory and looked at them once again, and then in a flash, she stabbed the eye of one of the followers. A few stabs in his eyes and he was down. The other two looked at her in horror. No, I already gave you everything I had. You said you would let me go. The other follower shouted. I said so? When? I am sure I would have remembered making such a promise. Why is it that I don't recall something like that? She replied before slashing both their necks. There was no way she was going to leave them alive after what they were planning.
Yes.
We can make a custom order for you at that price, the owner of the shop told her. Unfortunately, I am busy with other orders, so I can only let my apprentice work on it. Are you okay with that? Apprentice? She raised her eyebrow. I would like to meet your apprentice first. That's tricky. You see, my apprentice is a bit of a wimp, always staying holed up in the workshop and never going out, but I am sure I can work it out. I will arrange a meeting. The blacksmith class advancement is going to need a test, and a custom order of the scale is just the thing we need. The man told her to wait and went behind the door at the back of his shop and into his workshop. She was pretty sure she heard a scream from a girl or something, and her hand instinctively went to her new dagger, preparing to defend herself from any sudden attacks. Get in. The shopkeeper's voice came from within. She hesitated a moment but remembered that the village was a safe zone and she wouldn't be hurt inside, so she resheathed her dagger and went ahead. Inside the workshop, the shopkeeper was standing and behind him was a face she didn't expect to see here. Dressed in clothes which wouldn't look off on a girl, the blonde-haired kid who was obviously a boy stared at her. Aren't you that damper from Rias Gremory's peerage, Chiron's friend? The boy's eyes widened at her words. Why you know Bucho? He asked hesitantly. You could say that. I do keep tabs on her. After all, my cute sister is a part of her peerage. Your sister? You call her Kaneko? Kaneko-chan's sister? But isn't she? His eyes widened as he hid behind the shopkeeper again. Hi, I don't eat me. Huh. Venelana Gremory. She watched as Arthas hacked down another goblin with his sword before trampling on the skull of the beast, crushing it completely. Goblin Slayer. As the name suggested, it was a class which excelled in killing goblins. She didn't even realize that there could be a profession solely to kill goblins. Then again, there was a profession to kill pests, so how is this any different? From a technical standpoint, the Goblin Slayer class was a mixture of a squire, hunter, and a thief. It was a hybrid class of sorts, or at least that's what Shiro had said. With it, Arthas could use bows, swords, daggers, and traps, all the while covered in plate armor like a knight. Its stat gains were lower than a knight's, but not by much, but the sheer diversity of skills it offered more than made up for it. Then again, he never had any problem with stats, being the highest leveled one in the team. What she was worried about was his anger at the goblins. How much of it was due to his new class, and how much is due to that day? Shiro had noticed it too, but hadn't realized the severity of the situation clearly. In fact, he himself was struggling to cope up with everything. Arthas is a very kind boy with a great sense of justice. She had seen it on the first day itself when she had met him the first time. He could leave whenever he wanted, and could do so easily, but he fought to protect her honor, even when he was scared of killing for the first time. Perhaps he himself doesn't realize it, but it was the main reason which attracted her to make a team with him. Now, though, this very thing was becoming an unnecessary burden for him. It was especially so when everyone was trapped in this game, where the limits of their mental fortitude were tested every day. One could easily forget the difference between reality and fiction here. It was very easy for someone to channel their repressed fears and frustrations into hating something. Such kind of hate can slowly change people, make them more cruel, more vicious, and self-centered. The dungeon with the goblins appears to have had a very deep effect on him. Her words did help him calm down, but she knew that he was not completely all right. He had stayed awake the whole night on the day they had completed the quest. Even now, after almost 1 week had passed, he still had trouble sleeping sometimes. There were dark circles under his eyes even now. She didn't want him to break down due to this. Over the last few months, she had come to appreciate and even cherish his companionship, and she didn't want to see anything bad happen to him. They cleared out the outskirts of the goblin establishment. It was their quest this time. They had to completely clear out the whole goblin establishment near line and bring an end to this menace. I will check out the buildings, Arthas said as he slowly went in and threw a smoke pouch inside one of the huts to smoke out anyone who was hiding there. What they were not expecting was a coughing sound, a human. Arthas looked at Shiro and then at her and nodded. They quickly took positions behind his back, ready to attack anyone at a moment's notice, while Arthas prepared himself and kicked the door of the hut open in one kick. The door flew off its hinges, and the scene behind was revealed. It was a scene reminding them of the day of the quest. Naked women with swollen bellies, laying on the ground with lifeless-looking eyes. This time, however, they were truly dead and gone. Parts of their bodies were eaten up, the stench of the dead filling the whole place as soon as the door was opened. Arthas froze for a moment, and she quickly went beside him and put a hand on his shoulder. Are you all right? Yes, I am all right. He shook his head and went ahead to check other rooms while they checked the house for any loot. For the rest of the day, Arthas looked a bit lost in his thoughts whenever they were not hunting. They returned back to the town by the time the sun was setting. Shiro separated and went ahead to order new equipment. He was nearing the level cap for the scholar class. She herself was near the level cap for her class, but her equipment was already better than most, so they had decided to save more and get her something better after she got a T4 class. They got cleaned up after reaching their home, taking turns to bathe. Unlike other days, however, she saw that he was still lost in his thoughts. Even the sight of her in a wet towel, which would normally make him flustered, didn't make him break out of his reverie.
Sigh.
They had a simple meal, and Arthas went ahead to work on his scribe class. Although she was planning to talk to him, she decided to do it later. Calligraphy did help Arthas relax, so she decided to let him take his time and retired to bed herself. Today's quest was long and exhausting, and she needed her rest too. It was late at night when she was awakened from her sleep. She walked to the kitchen to get a glass of water and noticed that the light in the hall was still bright. Opening the door, she saw Arthas sitting on the chair, staring blankly in space. Arthas? He was shaken awake by her voice and looked at her for a moment before speaking. Yes. Are you all right? She asked, walking towards him. She noticed that his eyes were red, and the dark circles under his eyes were more prominent. She took a seat beside him quietly, waiting for him to speak. There were a few minutes of quiet before he spoke. I see their faces every time I try to close my eyes.
He spoke after some time.
Those women, they turn from happy living people to the corpses we saw during the day. He took a deep breath. And on top of those corpses, I see the goblins, laughing, sneering, and playing around with them, even in death. He hesitated for a moment. But the worst part is when I see real people in the same situation. Mother, my relatives, the faces of those women change, and I wake up every time I try to sleep. I haven't been able to sleep properly in days. She pulled him in for a hug and lightly caressed his hair. He didn't reject it either, wrapping his arms around her. After a few minutes, she separated from him and held his hand. He looked at her confused. Come with me. With just those words, she pulled him along to her room. I have been feeling a bit lonely sleeping alone all this time. Accompany me. Huh. Despite his state, he looked surprised, but she didn't give him any chance to deny as she pulled him into the bed and hugged the boy close to her chest. He looked totally caught off guard at the sudden development, but a moment later he let out a breath and returned her hug, closing his eyes. Good boy. She caressed his hair lightly for a few minutes as she felt his breath become even, and then he drifted off to sleep. Chapter 5, Part 4. Surzex, is this everyone? He asked as he looked at the group of people gathered in front of him. Ajuka nodded.
Yes.
They were given a full rundown of the situation. Their task will be to complete the game and rescue the people trapped inside. We have already provided everyone with a list. Each member they rescue will increase their reward, and the ones to complete the game will get a reward granted by the 3 factions together. All of them have agreed voluntarily to join the mission. Should anything happen to them, their families will be compensated for the next 3 generations. Most of them are people who have their own family members trapped inside the game, or have debts, or are people who have had injuries and had to leave their normal lives due to it, and some of them are criminals who wish to be pardoned. Some of them wish to achieve a high rank in the underworld. He nodded. A rank of up to high class will be rewarded to anyone who rescues anyone from the list, and ultimate class to anyone who completes the game. He promised. We will also offer them a reward from our side. Michael came forward and added, well, we will throw in something from our side, as well. Azazel added. They had ordered over 2,000 nerve gears, but due to the shortage of time, only 500 people were gathered within the week. They planned to send 4 batches of 500 people inside to allow the ones going ahead to make some progress while the later ones arrive. Many people were trapped inside the game, even among the supernatural factions. This included not only the members of the 3 factions, but also some others from different factions. He had sent messages to all the other Pantheons to inform them about the deal with the Game Master in the hopes that they would also send some people inside the game to rescue others. There had been no reply till now due to the short amount of time passing. Most of them were hesitating to make any moves after seeing the retaliation of the Game Master against the Devil Race due to the actions of Rise of him. He hoped that the successful entry of the first batch of people inside the game would also give them hope, and they would lend a hand to the cause. Lord Lucifer. He heard a voice beside him and looked to the side to see his sister's knight, kneeling before him. Please allow me to go inside to rescue others. He begged. The boy had been feeling guilty since the day he found out about what had happened. He had been out due to a contract and had escaped the fate of being trapped inside the game. The others hadn't been so fortunate. This had been eating away at the boy. Again, when knowing the boy's past, it was understandable. Survivor's guilt. He had once lost all his friends due to the actions of a madman, and once more, the same thing was being repeated with him. It must be even harder on the boy. That said, he, in his right conscience, couldn't allow him to do so. He knew how much his sister cared for her peerage members. Losing even one of them would leave her devastated. The rest of her peerage is already trapped inside. Now, if he were to send even the last one in such a dangerous situation, she would never forgive him when she came out. He let out a sigh and patted the boy's shoulder. They need you here, Yudo-kun. I promise nothing will happen to them. We will save them all. The boy tried to argue, but he shook his head. Tell me, Yudo-kun, do you think Rias would ever forgive any one of us if anything happened to you inside the game? Will Aquino, Kaneko, or Gasper forgive us?
No.
They would never wish for you to endanger yourself. What you can do in the meantime is stay here and train. Become stronger and wait for them to come out. While their minds may be trapped inside the game, their bodies are still outside. Please stay here and protect them while they are inside. He reassured the boy and finally sent him away. Looking at the departing back of the boy, he sighed. While he did so, said all those words to the kid, he himself was very nervous inside. Right now, he could only hope that everything goes well with this mission. Game Master. 800 people have entered the game in total. 500 from the Devil's side and 300 from other independent factions. This number is only going to increase when others learn of the successful entry of the Devil's side inside the game. I expect the number to be in the thousands when the different human governments and rich businessmen send people inside to rescue their family members. Red told him as she looked over the list. Well, we have prepared for a total of 40 million people, so it's not a big deal. I seriously doubt they would send that many people inside. Anyways, the more they send the better for us. I wonder what the world will look like after the game ends. There is sure to be a great upheaval. That's for sure. And they will have to deal with it and overcome it. If they can't even do so, then their fates at the hands of the machine and spirit gods would be the fault of no one but their own. I can just give them a chance to gain power. If they cannot unite even in the face of world destruction level danger and continue to plot against each other, let them go extinct. I will not stay here protecting them and wiping their asses forever, he replied. Well, I don't want to do so either. I am a dragon, not a guard dog. Red scoffed. She had been the one who was most pissed when she found out about her possible future. That had led her to train in earnest and gain the power she had today, which was almost twice of what she had the first time they had met with each other. Ophis and Tiamat were the same. That said, none of them wanted to be stuck in this world after knowing of the vast multiverse outside. All of them wanted to go out and explore. But if they did so, this world would be destroyed for sure. They wouldn't stand a chance against the machine gods, and if by some strange miracle they did survive, they would become a slave of the spirit gods. He had already seen another world facing such an end, being targeted by the machine gods and used as the pawn of the spirit gods who used them as cheap soldiers to thin out the numbers of their enemies. Ultimately, nothing was left of the world. While he was sure he could fight even the strongest of the spirit gods and machine gods with his current power and the help of his lovers, the rest of the world was not strong enough to even survive the clash between the two sides. To prevent this from happening, he and all his lovers decided to think of a way to empower the world itself so that they could face the dangers of the outside world. He was slightly grateful to this world for making him what he was today, but none of this was handed to him on a silver platter. He had to fight from the bottom, as a human on the verge of death due to getting caught between the fight of the two heavenly dragons to the strongest existence of this world. He had carved his path with his own two hands. So, he was returning the same favor to the world. Those who were capable would use this chance to become stronger. He had done his part in the background too. He had trapped the messengers of the spirit gods who had already arrived to this world a decade ago in a never-ending illusion to keep the other side in the dark. This game, Soul Art Online, was his wish as well as the last chance of this world to survive their imminent destruction of the whole world. Number of people reaching T3 class jobs has reached the mark. Tiamat interrupted their talks, and he looked at the screen. Every region has 20 T3 class people now. Start the first world mission. Britannian Emperor Discord. Author's note. I am back with another chapter of Soul Art Online. Things are heating up bit by bit. Arthas became a goblin slayer of all things. The game is forcing them to face their fears, and the months of staying in the game doesn't make it any better. They will struggle and grow up in the process. P.S. Snuggles help. On the other hand, Koka is inside the game and meets Gasper. I will write some parts in the future chapters telling everyone's side of the story and what they are doing in the meantime. Enjoy the new chapter. Good day, peace out. Chapter 6, Part 1. Arthas. I woke up to a soft feeling on my face. On opening my eyes, I saw white. It took me a moment to realize what it was, and I pulled away quickly. The movement broke Vina's sleep, and she looked at me groggily. Arthas. Did you wake up? I nodded mechanically while my brain was catching up with the events of the previous night. The incidents with the goblin had really affected me a lot more than I was expecting. Did you sleep well? She asked again. I did. It was probably the first peaceful nap I have had in a while. It might be due to finally letting my heart out about the whole thing.
Yes.
That's great. Not sleeping well can be very bad for our health. I am glad you are all right now. Thank you. I sincerely thanked her. She looked at me slightly surprised before a bring smile dawned on her face. Oh my. You look really handsome when you smile. You should do that more often. Huh? It took me a moment to realize what she meant, and my eyes widened. I touched my face. Was I smiling again? The morning went by quickly while I was feeling a lot fresher than before. I could smile again. Even if it was just barely, I was recovering my ability to show emotions. This fact alone made me feel a lot more comfortable. By breakfast time, Shuro had also arrived there. He ate his breakfast with us nowadays. While eating, he looked at me curiously. Is there something on my face? I asked, tilting my head.
No.
You just feel different somehow? I guess a good sleep does help a lot. I smiled. His eyes widened. You're smiling? Yes, I am. That's great. Glad to have you back. Thanks. We ate our dinner and talked about many things. You are level 25 and Vina is 28, right? I asked and they nodded. In that case, we will get her to level 30 first. I suggested.
Yes.
Anyways, we will need to test out other classes for her while the mage class is already set for me. Shuro agreed. I checked my Shinjin-ryu and it was level 21. Shinjin-ryu, unique skill, level 21, EXP. 11001/21000. Shinjin-ryu, or style that originates from the heart, is a school of martial arts in which the practitioner learns hand-to-hand combat as well as the ability to control their aura for combat. Passively increases +2 STR +2 Yendi +2 DX +2 INT +2 WIS per level. Current increase +42 STR +42 Yendi +42 INT +42 WS. This skill was seriously broken, at least at this stage. This kind of increase was similar to having an extra T2 class stats added on my already existing stats. Obviously, the advantages will be evened out at higher levels. But at this stage, it's absurdly broken. And it was not even at full level yet. It's just that it takes too much time to level up as I can only practice it at night. My mind went on to the other two rewards I had gotten from the Man of Culture achievement. The ability to use undead classes while not being an undead myself, and the Goblin Slayer class. All three of these were related to the references I made to get these. I should make a list of the references I can think of and test them all one by one. By the way, did you guys find anyone following or spying on you? I asked, remembering the problem. Some people did look from a distance after we bought the hostages from the quest, and some did ask me about it, but nothing more than that. Shuro accepted. It had been a week since that day, and whoever it was that was following us didn't show up after that. We had still maintained our usual routine of going out in disguise just to be careful.
I see.
By the way, do you know who among the other players is the highest level outside our team? That is... He put a hand on his chin and thought for a while. That must be Gareth and Dwayne. They are leaders of two other teams, Azure Blade and Blood Knights. Gareth is a martial artist and Dwayne is an archer, and each of their team has around 6 members. That said, the level of their members vary a lot. 3 of their members are production classes, or those who are probably being raised to become a scholar, and then a mage. They are still T2. They are recruiting people quickly though, so we must also start or we will be left behind. By the way, do you have any name for the guild? Shiro asked. Name? I shook my head. Let me think. Which one should I do? I thought of several things, and decided on one of the most iconic ones that I knew. Fairy tale. Fairy tale? Because this world is no less than one. Shiro asked.
No.
Not tale. A tale. I explained. Do fairy even have tails? He asked. That's the question. Do fairy have tails? Do they even exist? It's an eternal mystery. An eternal adventure. Just that. He asked skeptically. Well, yeah. I nodded.
Sure.
I don't see why not. Fairies do exist, those annoying bunch. Some of them do have tails too, but why not? This name is good, Vina said, and we looked at her oddly, while she just smiled.
Great.
Then I will register our guild after our hunt today. Shiro agreed. I smiled. We got ready for the daily leveling, and went outside, as usual only for something odd to happen. The gatekeeper at the gate stopped us. We looked at him confused. This was the first time such a thing had happened. Excuse me? Is there something wrong? Shiro took the lead and questioned. The guard nodded. The City Lord Scouts have found traces of goblin settlements merging. It is expected that a goblin general was born. A goblin general? They are high-tier 5 monsters, incredibly strong and smart. They can rival a Lord Knight in terms of power, but their most dangerous skill is the ability to lead goblins and other monsters. They can command goblins of lower tier than themselves and control hordes of such goblins. Previously, the largest horde under a goblin general was known to be around 17,000 goblins, and they had destroyed a mid-level city. A mid-level city was far bigger than something like Line. They had at least one tier 6 person leading and several tier 5 ones. Was a T5 monster that dangerous? And now you think the goblin settlements merging is the sign of a goblin general being born? Shiro asked. While it was called being born, it was actually some T4 goblin commander evolving into a general, but such things were very rare. It's most likely. The city lord has sent several scouts to different towns, and we'll be getting an update by this afternoon. Till then, by the orders of the city lord, no one is allowed to leave the city. The gatekeeper insisted.
I see.
Thank you for telling us everything. Shiro pulled out a gold coin and gave it to the man, who casually slipped it in his pocket and looked around, and then whispered something in his ears. I merely raised an eyebrow while he turned around, and we left back to head towards our home. He signaled us to wait till we got home. What was that about? I asked as we reached home. The guy brought out a piece of paper, ink, and a feather pen. The gatekeeper said that the city lord will draft the players to face the goblin raids. It's probably a large-scale quest. We need to make preparations in advance. How much funds do we have? Around 28,000 gold. I have 7,500 myself. We need to get as many supplies as we can. It will probably be a city defense-type raid. Vina-san, can I ask you to prepare as many attack-type consumables as you can? We are going to need tons of them. If somehow my predictions are wrong, we can always sell them to other players, so we won't be suffering any losses. We will also need tons of healing items. Can you tell us what ingredients we're going to need and the prices? Vina nodded and started to make a list. Getting the ingredients will not be a problem, but I don't think I can process so many of them even if I were to work all day. This much would take me working for a week to get everything ready, she said after completing the list of ingredients. That can be solved. Can we recruit any other herbalists? I asked. I do know 3 other herbalists. One of them is a member of the Blood Knights, so that one is probably a no-go. I can contact the other 2. I have some acquaintances from the guild too. They are NPCs, but I think I can hire them for some gold, Vina added. Then we discuss the price and get them to work, but first we need to buy these items as soon as we can. Others are going to know about the raid soon, and they will probably all jump on the chance too. With the demand of the item rising and supply being limited, the prices will rise. We need to be quick on our feet. It was a good thing that we went out hunting very early in the morning to avoid getting tracked. It was a habit we had made since the time we were followed. We had even bought special capes which prevented appraisal-type skills under a certain level, although the price of those things had made us bleed. Most of the players didn't even wake up at this time, so we still had time on our hands. We prepared everything and went out as soon as we could. First, we bought everything we could buy of the ingredients of the healing items and then attack-related items. Vina went ahead and went to contact her contacts in the guild, while Shuro went to get in touch with the other two herbalists. I, in the meantime, went to get our equipment fixed at the blacksmith's and get some extra spares. By the time everything was done, it was late in the morning, and everyone had found out that we couldn't leave the town, and some among them had figured out that it was related to some quest. They were rushing to buy stuff. Vina had consigned most of the items to be made by the NPC herbalists, while she worked on some herself. Shuro and I were working on some plans and strategies for the raid. We didn't have anything concrete, as we had no idea what this quest was. This changed soon. In the afternoon, the city lord held a gathering in the town square, and every player simultaneously got a new quest. World Quest 1. The beginning of the end. A great danger is opening its eyes as chaos has started to spread all over the continent. Brace up and fight against the approaching darkness for a chance to survive. Objective 1. Attend the city lord summons.